Hey friends, this is Laura with Laura B. Flosstube. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me again this week. We are going to be working on block 7 and 8 for the Bloom quilt sew along. And I'm going to do kind of a condensed version this week. So I'm not going to show you every little step. If you want more information on anything that you see in this video, please go back and watch some of the previous blocks. I go into a lot more detail there. So I just want to give you a heads up on that, and without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to take you through with these blocks is just sewing some circles and sewing some curves, just basically sewing that fabric to the interfacing. I'm going to try to change my camera angle so you can get a better view and really kind of see exactly how I line up my foot and my needle and my fabric and everything. And I really hope that it helps you out. I'm going to try to keep my hands out of your way so you can see. I am going to adjust my stitch length down to 2.0. And I just have my shapes traced onto the interfacing, and those are on top of the fabric. And I'm just going to get started. As you can see, I'm going pretty slow around this curve just to make sure I can stay on that line. We did pretty good, so it's going to be good enough. Let's go ahead and end this here and go to the next shape. Now when I was cutting out this fabric, I did cut out both, I cut out the fabric big enough for both of the shapes, and then when I cut out the pieces of the interfacing shapes, I also left those attached. So this is just making a little quicker work for me, just because I don't have two small rectangles to deal with. I just have this one larger piece. Alright, you guys have been asking me about circles and how I get those to work so smoothly. I'm just going to tell you that, slow and steady wins the race, and lots of practice. I am sewing at an angle here, so please forgive me if I get off the line. We'll see how this goes. And we're just going to go slow around this curve. Hopefully you can see, I have my left hand kind of on the circle, and I'm just applying some pressure to my machine plate there, just so I can turn this piece of fabric just a little as I'm going around that curve. And I am trying to go a little slower so you can kind of see the technique. But really this just takes some practice, and you're going to do great at it, I know. I am kind of just like turning my hand and turning the fabric as I go around this circle, just trying to keep it smooth. And, the more you do this, the faster you can go. But it just takes practice, you guys. Just don't be afraid to make some circles. So here's my first circle, and then all I have left to do for shape, or for flower, number 7, is the flower itself. And this one is kind of a combination between some flowers and some curves and some straight pieces. So we're just going to jump in here and get this one done too. Remember to stitch over your beginning line just a little bit, just to kind of lock that stitch together. And this is all we need for block 7. Alright, so here we are. We're going to start working on block 8. And I just thought I would show you a close-up of how I stack my fabrics together. So in this case, I left the shapes, the interfacing together, but I have 4 different pieces of fabric. So I'm just going to start over here. And again, I apologize if my head gets in your way. I do want to make sure that my shapes look good though. Now this is an oval. So I'm going to use kind of the same technique as I did with the circle. Just moving this around. Right, so I'm going to here. See, I miss the curve sometimes too. Here's a little small circle. And these are the same as the big ones. Just put the pressure, let your fingers move that fabric around. Stop if you feel like you need to for repositioning, or like I just did to cut some excess fabric loose from the previous shapes. And then this circle's a little bigger. Okay, we're going to turn some shapes and then I'll meet you at the ironing board. Okay, I have all my shapes turned out and I'm just going to now lay out my blocks. I'm going to be working on block 7 first, and so I'll insert a picture so you can see what I'm looking at. And then I am going to be using the free fuse again this week just because I really liked it. I liked how fast it was to just be able to go on to applique. And again, I'm going to put a piece of fabric, just some scrap fabric, over my block just so I can fuse this first little stem down, and then we'll build from there. All right, so we do have the 2 petals to put on here, and I'm gonna just, offset them a little bit just because I think that's cute. And then when it comes to this flower and circle, I want to try to get it perfectly centered, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that flower in half both ways, and I'm going to press that a little bit. That's going to give me some lines. And then I'm going to do the same thing to my circle. I'm going to fold it in half and then half again. So I'm going to fold it into quarters. Press that a little bit. And now I have these lines on here that I can just easily line up with my flower, and I know that it's perfectly in the center of that shape. Put that on there just for a second. And then I'm going to put a little free fuse under the top of that flower. Remember, I don't want to put it under the bottom because it may, it would be in the way when I go to sew down my stem. All right, so here's that. Let that sit for just a second. Now, the original design has these petals just going straight out, and that is pretty cute. So I think I probably will just go ahead and go with that layout, even though I said I was going to offset them. What's really cool about this is you can, do your own thing, or you can decide to go with the original plan. Again, just putting that iron on there just for just a few seconds to get that free fuse to set and kind of, melt and fuse and do its job. All right, so now this one will be ready to applique as soon as I have the other one laid out, and I'll head over to the machine. All right, so our other one is a little more involved. Just a preparation for this one, I took the background and I folded it into quarters, and then I folded it into eighths. And so I have all these lines that will help me lay out my block perfectly. Now I do know that I have the 2 stems, and they go crisscross in the middle. So I'm just going to go ahead and put just a little bit of free fuse along there and along here. And again, I will use this extra scrap piece of fabric to make sure I have those laid out right. Now, one thing for these stems, what you can do is fold it in half and pinch it, and then you know this will go right in the middle. Now, I did cut these a little longer than I needed to, so I knew I was going to have plenty of room. Plenty. So we'll fuse those down first, and now we will go and do all the flowers. Now these little oval flowers, they are all layered with the pink and the yellow, which is the colors for mine. Doesn't mean it's the colors for yours. But we're going to go ahead and do all of those. Just putting a little bit of that free fuse on each one. I'm going to go ahead and kind of stack those up so I can get more than just one at a time. Looks like I can get all 4 of them. That's kind of fun. Now we can do the same thing with these circles as we did for the circle and the flower. If we want to fold these into quarters, and then we will be able to center those perfectly. But I think we're just going to leave them the way we're going to eyeball these. But we are going to go ahead and free fuse this together as well. Got a little stuff on there, so let's just brush that off. All right, now the red pieces that I have go directly out from the center, so we're just going to lay this here. We're not going to actually fuse it down yet, but we're just going to lay it so we can slip these in so we know where they go. Now you might remember last week the last 2 blocks that I did, I told you, you can measure this out as much or as little as you want. I'm going to kind of eyeball this for the most part. All right, so I have my machine set. That's on the zigzag. The width is 1.8, the length is 0.9, just like all of the other blocks that I've done. What I've done actually for my own sanity, I guess, on that is I've made myself a little sticky note that I've stuck by my machine so I don't forget what those are supposed to be. Now, I'm going to do this a little differently, and we're going to see how it turns out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this green stem, and I'm going to go up and down and then come and do the red and then go catch that green stem all the way around. So I'm going to lift this up and go as we work our way around. Now, since this is under the circle, I don't worry about doing a locking stitch here. Now I will do a locking stitch here because there's, it's on top and there's nothing to cover any of it up where I started that stitch. And same thing as when you're sewing your fabric and interfacing pieces together. I just going to keep my fingers there, pressing against the plate of the machine and working that fabric around into a nice smooth circle. Obviously, like there, I needed to adjust a little bit, so I went ahead and lifted the presser foot and turned the needle. I'm going to go ahead and finish these up. and then I will meet you at the cutting mat. All right, so my blocks are appliqued. The last thing I have to do is just trim them down. So I've got out my 8.5 inch square. I know that I set all of those cute little flowers about 3/4 of an inch from the edges. And so I'll just line this up. I'm sure I just blocked your view, sorry about that, but I'm cutting around a square, so not too exciting. There's one, and here is the other one. We're gonna put this, let's see, we have 1 3/4. 1 and just a little shy of 3/4. All right, so and here's the other one. All right, I'm gonna put these up on the design wall so you can see them, and we will wrap up. After all that work, here we go with blocks 7 and 8. I love the way these turned out. The quilt is really coming together quite nicely, and I'm really excited to get my second row put together. Now, as I told you when I went over the border for the first row, I'm not going to show you that process again. I'm basically going to lay out my fabrics. I'm going to add these extra pieces on each end, which form my inner border. And I'll attach the second row to the first. And thank you so much for liking and subscribing and sharing out my videos. My subscriber base has really grown, and I know it's because of you. So I thank you so much for that, and I will see you next time. Until then, happy stitching.